Hi, my name is Anel Maldonado, and this is my author discussion on Audre Lorde. Audre Lorde was an American writer, poet, feminist, and civil rights activist. She was born in the year 1934 in New York City to Caribbean parents. She was raised in Harlem with two older sisters, and she was very nearsighted that she was considered legally blind. She played She played a huge role for African Americans in the civil rights movement, and she always spoke to defend others and herself. She identified as a black lesbian writer. She is known for showing anger and emotion on all of her work. She was also known for fighting for black female equality and for them to being able to identify themselves. Her career started in high school. Her first poem was published in 17 magazine. It, she first wanted her high school to publish it, but they did not like it. They thought it was too controversial and inappropriate, so 17 magazine published it. I think this was something that's really cool because growing up, I read 17 magazine, and I can honestly say that like everything that was on it influenced me, whether it was like trend, fashions, or just anything I read. And I think that so many young girls read it. So for them to, when she published her work on it, and for young girls who have read her work, I think that was something very great and powerful because they could look up to her and get inspired by Audre Lorde. It was so fascinating for me to learn and do research on Audre Lorde because her work resonated with many people and they also had a voice through her. That was one of her very most powerful things that she gave a voice to so many people, whether it was black people or just people in the LGBTQ community or in the civil rights movement. She spoke on behalf of many lesbian African Americans and she gave a voice to them in this community, which I thought was something so powerful because back then in that time it was so hard for people to have a voice and for people to in the that are in the LGBTQ community to even be heard and especially black people. So I think that it was something very powerful that she sort of gave a voice and an image to these people. Also, she was very well known for being a civil rights movement spokesperson. She did this a lot through her poems, and in her poems, she wrote with a lot of anger and hatred, and she always wrote about women's rights, which I think is awesome because as a female, we are not always heard, and again, especially in that time, I think it was just something very powerful, and again, especially for black women, she she just spoke so much about the value and the rights that they deserved. So the readings we read from Audre Lorde in class were from the Norton Anthropology of African American Literature, Volume 2. They all had a theme to it, and the ones that we read were mainly about race, which is what sort of all of the readings we have been doing in the class mainly focus on. One reading that really stood out to me and I thought was so powerful was Power because it focused on a 10-year-old black boy that is being shot by that is shot by a white police officer. And I thought there was just something so very powerful because even now to this day it is something that we still see on the news and that is still causes so much controversy, like for example the Trayvon Martin case. everything that happened with it. I just think this is something very powerful, and it just proves to you how, even though it was written so many years ago, like even now we still resonate. And I feel like even now with like just everything going on politically and stuff, that it's something that is very important right now. And then also in it, the police officer, is found non-guilty by a white judge, and only one black woman is working on this case, and she's surrounded by all white people. So we get to see her, how she, being a black woman and experiencing this, she really had, even though no matter what she said, her voice wasn't heard and she couldn't fight for the young boy. So it just proves to us, like, even now, like, how society, no matter what, sometimes no matter how hard you fight, sometimes our voice, there, anyone's voice isn't heard. Another reading we made was Cole, which was really cool to read about because it focused on all the sufferings and the hardships that people of color went through in New York City, including herself. It was very important because the people of color resonated with this poem, and also people that aren't of color could see it from a different perspective and could try to relate what they were going through. Power and Coal were two readings that were so real and so raw to read about. So I highly recommend to anyone. Besides all of this, Audre Lorde was a very well known for shining light and focusing on many of the unfairness that African Americans went through. When the civil rights movement was happening, she became an advocate for it, and she started doing so through her work in her poems. She started writing with anger and hatred to what was happening. She had such a powerful and special voice because when you read her poems, she had a way of making the audience, of making the reader feel what she was feeling too, and you could feel what was happening and what she was experiencing. It was very fascinating to read about this author, her background, and her work because her experience in life, it sort of like explains to you why it is that she wrote the way that she did. And it was just so powerful to see that like she created a voice for so many people in so many communities. And it was just great to read about Audre Lorde.